Hi guys, Paul here. Welcome back to the Anfield View. Welcome back to a World Cup Day One special chance to review the action, everything that happened on day one in the host country. We were in Mexico, we've got Canada, we've got the US. And let's just get straight into it. Opening ceremony, I thought was superb, amazing colour, amazing atmosphere, superb music, amazing artists. Shakira, the hips still don't lie, the still got the magic on that front. No, absolute phenomenal opening ceremony. And sometimes with opening ceremonies, they can go on too long and it could just be a little bit too much. And it's always tricky to find the right balance. I think that was a really impressive opening ceremony. Thoroughly enjoyed that. I think that's part one. I do believe there's another opening ceremony to come with Katy Perry at some point as well. Straight into the first match, you had obviously what the host nation Mexico on that from playing South Africa. It's a funny situation really because it's great. It's obviously great to see South Africa back in the in the World Cup, and I always think that both countries are always going to be competitive, and Mexico can always be really great for sort of entertainment. But both countries are at different positions in terms of where they're at with the talent at the moment. Obviously, been what long gone are the days of peaks or Raul Jimenez and Javier Hernandez and Blanco and in South Africa's case, they're no longer the Benny McCarthy, the Stephen Pienaars, the Lucas Radebe on that front. So it was interesting to see. I mean, I think South Africa definitely got the athletes in many respects with respect to that game. Obviously, they made a mistake for the opening goal, and then there's the goal was really put through the goalkeeper's legs. Shouldn't they? They really shouldn't have given that one away, but it was good pressing by Mexico. Mexico very much looked in control really throughout the entire game to some extent. After the first sort of 10, 15 minutes was pretty entertaining, sort of petered out a tiny bit, then went into the water break. We'll come back around to that sort of issue in a minute, onto the water break, then went into a bit of a lull really for a period after that. There was chances being created, more sort of long range shots. You never really at any point felt South Africa were necessarily going to score. And they didn't really have the craft and the goal. They got into some good positions, but the final ball just really wasn't there. I think with Mexico, if they really wanted to go for it a lot more, they probably could have got a lot more goals in this game. One of the sendings off was one of the South Africa players just sort of reaching back and just sort of accident. It didn't look deliberate, but he hit somebody in the face. That got red card. I don't know. I mean, it did happen. I'm not sure how much it was violent conduct, but we live in the era that we do live in this generation. So I suppose by the letter of the law in the world that we live in with football now as it is, but felt a tiny bit harsh maybe on that front. The red card for the Mexico defender. Look, it was lazy defending. Aldmead got pushed past, was going to be running clear into the box, either to have a shot or to square across for maybe a tap in. I don't think you can really argue the red card on that one either. And so, yeah, I think the red cards in that game, two for South Africa, one for Mexico, pretty justified. Really can't really get over any arguments on that front. In terms of the game, I suppose really the highlight for me would be obviously Raul Jimenez, especially coming off the serious head injury that he had all those years ago. It's nice to see him really get that moment to score a goal for Mexico in the World Cup, and obviously you saw the emotion that came across himself. And anyone that follows the Premier League in his career, such a talented striker that really is. I don't think he's ever truly recovered from that in terms of finding the form that he was at pre head injury. And look, it was life threatening. Forget about your career. And so the very fact that he's obviously been able to recover and has the guts to still keep on playing, obviously hats off and kudos to him, isn't it? Really on that front. So Harden, you'd have to have a heart of stone not to really been touched by that moment to see him sort of rise to the back post of power in the header and absolute quality personified Jimenez in his prime. It's one of those where you hear it in his prime. If Mexico had a good run, he'd be a good shout for a top goal scorer sort of situation in a World Cup. But it's one of those where I think that injury really hit him in his peak, really in many ways. So yes, that game finished 2-0 to Mexico. Pretty comfortable win really for Mexico. I'm not even sure you can even say it. The conditions, I think it was just a gap in quality between the two. South Africa have definitely got the athletes, but they just don't have really the end product. They got into some positions that just didn't really do the final pass or the final ball. A little bit of naivety on tackling, quite a lot of fouls they gave away as well. It's just one of those that they're just a little bit too slow to some of the tackles and just too many bookings. And yeah, they're going to miss sort of at least a couple of players for the next game as well. So that game finished 2-0. I'd say it's an entertaining-ish game. It was a game that could have, but I suppose could have caught fire more in terms of goals. And when you get that early goal, it can go one of two ways. It can really carry the game forward to a lot of goals. It just sort of 1-0 could have maybe been gone 2-0 to Mexico pretty quickly. It didn't. Then it sort of calmed down a bit. Then you had the water break interruption. I mean, how we ended up with next to no injury time at half time when we had a water break is, well, answers on the postcard when it comes to that one, because how you actually end up with no injury time when you have a water break and they didn't stop the clock either. Well, that just, I mean, if you're a supporter and you spent the amount of money that you spent, and they've spent an absolute fortune on all these tickets in the World Cup, and you're being sort of, I wouldn't say robbed of actual playing time, but you are really. I mean, that feels a little bit wrong for. I mean, in the Premier League, you get injury time on top of injury time on top of injury time, and it's almost an overdose of it. In this situation, it's like there's next to no injury time, and you're like, well, there's at least 3 minutes from the water break, plus a lot of the fouls. I mean, for me, it's a minimum of 5 minutes injury time that should have been at halftime, and there was next to none. Baffling for me that one. So that would be an issue I'd probably raise out of that game. Be interested to see how Mexico perform when they play South Korea. That'll be really entertaining. That'll be a really entertaining game that will on that front. So we move on to the late game, the evening game, which is South Korea versus Czech Republic, as I call them, or Czechia as they are now known. On that front, we've got obviously Hyung Min Sung, used to play for Spurs. Oh God, did he have some chances in that game? He must have had about 5 or 6 opportunities to score. Made some great runs. Well, it's not like his finishing was dreadful. It's just he's just not in the peak of his career. He's at the back end of his career and just doesn't. He's not as clinical as he once was. I know he's playing in the US now. He's had a bit of a struggle this season over there as well. You can't fault the runs. I mean, he did some amazing runs, and he's definitely still got the movement. It's not even that slow still. I mean, he's still got some elements of pace. He's not as rapid as he used to be, but just that he's not as sharp and as clinical. But the movement's still there, and his reading of the game's still there. I mean, he could have scored a hat trick. He had that many chances last night. I mean, without doubt, South Korea is a strange one. They controlled the game, absolutely. They 100% controlled the game, but it was a situation where, in many ways, because Czech Republic were always going to be a threat in set pieces, which they were. They scored one from a set piece, which was the long throw. Great flat long throw by Czech Republic, and that then bullet header. Caught the defender flat-footed. Goalkeeper had no chance. That was really great. I mean, the throw made that. I mean, the run was good, but the throw, superb flat throw, difficult to defend ultimately. And then they had another goal from a set piece that was disallowed for offside. So it's always a situation, and I mean this in the 1,000% respect. Obviously, South Korea don't have the world's tallest players on the pitch. They're a relatively sort of small team in terms of just pure height, and so you're always going to be susceptible to certain teams that play or have massive strengths on set pieces. There isn't that many teams that necessarily are play to those strengths, but there's going to be teams that have phenomenal sort of defenders and the odd midfielder that can be really good at headers. So it's definitely a weakness there, but without a doubt, it was a pleasure to watch the game. To be honest, South Korea were amazing. I think the star of the show was in Din Hun, and that scored on a really great sort of got the ball twisted and swiveled and turned and chipped it into the corner. fantastic skill that was. Yeah, I mean, it was a game where he played well. Humans still not played well apart from the finishing. For me, Lee, that's a PSG. Apparently, he said was at 30 odd starts in the actual league on this year, but it's not obviously not started as many in the actual Champions League because of the sheer depth they got with Barcola and Dumby and Dembele and Kvaratskhelia and you name it, they got 74,000 well-being players. But hi, as you know, obviously we're a Liverpool channel. Equally, I'm always hesitant to come out of a World Cup ever suggesting you should ever buy anybody because Liverpool did that many years ago with El Hadji Diouf, and that was just horrible. So we don't need to talk about that experience ever again. But look, when Liverpool are really looking at talent to buy, and ultimately, he looks an incredibly talented player. He was the orchestrator of everything for PSG, and whilst he didn't get the goals, his range of passing and creativity was unbelievable. So Lee Cahill, that's at PSG at the moment. I'd be interested to see how much it costs to buy him if I was Liverpool. It'd be definitely. I know you could say, oh, you don't want to buy him based on that, that performance. It's like, well, in all fairness, it's quite a physical team. Czech Republic mirrors a little bit of the Premier League. His creativity and passing and range and skills, very, very. I've never, ironically, I've never seen that much from him because I really only really watched PSG to some extent when the Champions League, and he's just not had that much of a really run in the Champions League. But wow, PSG have just got a ridiculous amount of talent, and what a talented player he really was. So he wasn't the man of the match, but equally for in general terms, he was the orchestrator. For me, he was the star of the show in general terms, but he didn't obviously create or score the goal. But equally, he created so many opportunities for humans so on that game. Game finished 2-1. It's just a thoroughly enjoyable game. I don't think anybody would come away from that game thinking that it wasn't enjoyable. I thought South Korea was just a pleasure to watch. And it was just fascinating in terms of it wasn't like the Czech Republic were poor to watch. They just had a different style of playing. As well, if you're in the Premier League, you obviously got Thomas Soucek, always a threat in set pieces. You got Sufa that used to play in the Premier League as well. You got Patrick Schick, that's at Leverkusen. Yeah, they've managed to do a good job. Patrick Schick, he would have been the one that there would have been the danger man for them to really keep an eye on in terms of South Korea. They managed to do a pretty good job on him, I think, in the end. I think you couldn't argue that South Korea really on the bulk of the play that they really didn't deserve the win. I think they did. I think they played very well. Yeah, I always enjoy watching the South Korea World Cups. They've always impressed me with the style of playing. Yeah, I know style is not everything. You obviously have to play to the strengths that you've got, but yeah, they've got some very talented players, South Korea. And as I say, if purely from a Liverpool point of view, on day one of the World Cup, and if you were to buy somebody from, I suppose, day one, I would be looking at buying Lee from PSG. Really, really, really impressive performance by himself, and he, absolutely shone on that front. So, yeah, it'd be great to hear your thoughts, guys. Feel free to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave any comments on anything you'd like me to cover at the World Cup. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Ultimately, it'll be interesting to see how you always have these situations when you've got water breaks. It does sort of affect the sort of rhythm of play, and sometimes you can if the game's flowing, it becomes a bit of a lull, and it takes about 20 minutes for things to pick back up again. I mean, I would say in the first game it was heading into a bit of a lull pre-water break and just continued afterwards. Didn't seem to affect South Korea game too much, which was good news. Bit of a weird one, as I say, in terms of the actual injury time. Never quite. It baffles me sometimes. You get 12 minutes in some games and you get none in other games. And when you got water breaks, there are at least 2 or 3 minutes. I can't understand why that just wouldn't be there on that front. So answers on the postcard on that one, guys. So I hope you enjoyed day one of the World Cup. For me, blue tick on terms of the opening ceremony. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Colourful, great music, great atmosphere. Both games thoroughly enjoyable to watch. Both competitive games. Mexico played well. just a level really above South Africa in terms of where they're at. They've got more creativity at really the crucial moments, a little bit more solid as well. It'll be interesting to see, the South Korea game against Mexico. Should be a really enjoyable game to watch. Come next week. I think it's next week when they play each other as well. So, yeah, we roll on to day two, guys. Hope you enjoyed that recap of day one of the World Cup 2026, Mexico, Canada, and the USA. Yeah, look forward to speaking to you more soon. You have a great weekend. Take care.